Everyone who knows me knows I'm a big fan of Oleg Skripka. And for those who don't know what Skripka means, it's violin. So my friend is named Oleg Violin. Put that together. So thank you for joining, and I really can't wait to see both our discussion tonight. But a little bit later, I just got off the phone with a guy I really, really find awesome, the liberal trucker, and he's a, what's the word you want to say, influencer, or like I don't really want to say influencer because I hate that word, and that's not him. But he's a funny guy I like to watch on Instagram, and we were talking about like what to cover. And I said, no problem, no pressure. That's it right there, the liberal trucker. Love that guy. And actually some fans here in this space right now that really dig it already. I know Patty, for instance, that's up here, Patty Soapman. We pass links around for comedic relief. We have things to solve in our inner broken child. And the way I do that is I laugh my ass off. And in fact, I remember there was a day when I was so fucking stressed. I had way too many things to do, and I open up Instagram and I scroll through the shit I don't want to see. And you know, when I hear my friend says, "Yeah, I know you guys really want me to like tone it down," and yeah, not gonna fucking happen. That's not what we're gonna do. That's not how things work. So everyone knows that with this situation in the war, we're not going to do that anytime soon. We don't really get that luxury. We have to find some way to get through this shit. And I do it with a combination of raw rage and a bit of humor and a whole lot of fucking coffee. Um, Whenever I'm running out of electricity and it's freezing cold, I just take my hand and I stick my finger back in the coffee and it starts steaming in no time whatsoever. If I don't have enough energy in the tank on that level, I just turn on Steve Witkoff for about 5 fucking seconds. Up goes the temperature, in goes the rage, and I'm right back on gear. Hmm. And if that doesn't work, I turn on like I have my inspiration flag behind me, my Marines that were held in captivity, and a lot of them are coming home. And if I need that kindness, that love, that warmth, that little part of me that goes, "Oh, you're not so evil." I have the grandmothers downstairs, the babusi, and I have my Marine families. Like I went today, I went to the captured defenders rallies that happen every Sunday here. I did a little bit of a live stream off that, handing my phone, walking around because I don't have a stabilizer for the phone yet, and started talking with the folks that really go through shit, that literally wake up every day wondering if their husband's coming home, if their son's coming home, brother, fiancés. And I know some of these families for 3 years, and I know they don't get a day off, so I don't take a day off. And this morning when I woke up, 5 o'clock in the morning, went live for an hour and 50 minutes. I looked at the timer. I didn't realize an hour and 50 minutes went by, but calling out the rage of the missile attacks going right outside my window, um, and turned off the sensors and just went at it. And if you watch that, it's actually live here on this platform. I had all the lights in my blood red mode to let people know I'm okay. Everything's fine. Shaun will join us here in a minute. I'm sure he's actually scrubbing over a bit of the script we were talking about because we have a lot of information to cover. And the primary reason why we went with a Sunday space, we have one for Friday. Every Friday we do a live from Ukraine, Voices from the Front, Shaun Penner, Wiretap me, to talk about what we both know. And we were not done the other day. We have a lot of things to talk about with 4-year mile mark in 2 days since Russia launched its full-scale invasion on Ukraine. Or as I call it, the goat that won't gow down the snake's, gullet. If you've ever seen one of those pythons that thought that they could swallow a fucking goat and then it died, I love that shit. I love that because it reminds me of how Russia walked in and said, we're going to have 3 days to Kyiv. And I've said before, if you don't like dark humor, this is probably not the location for you. If you don't like the idea that air raids can go off, missiles can come in and kill your host midstream, not the location for you to hang out, because that's the life I live here. We do have some friends listening right now, joining us right now. I see Arcadian's here, Dan's here, Sam's here, Nancy's here. You've heard me on the air when we were on Twitter Spaces, the robotic ketamine, cokehead, whatever he is, platform, and we try to use it for our own good. And you've heard drones fly directly over my apartment, and I don't have to use a dramatic effect. I just have to take the cans off, hold them out the window, go. Everyone got the idea? Yeah. Let's hit a fucking building. And that's the reality I live in. So I don't have to bullshit it. I have to soften it down. Which brings me to the discussion of, are you worm food tonight? Are you zombie food? Are you the one who already gave up before the war hit to your front door? Are you going to be a fighter? Like my friend who's here, Patty, she's a fighter. I have friends that they're not passive. They're not going to let the zombie apocalypse come in and knock their doors down and walk away with them and make them useless. They get up in the morning and they find a new skill, a new way to go through the life that they have and be fucking useful. And I've said, you don't have to be Superman. If you can take a box from the left side of the table and you can move it to the right side of the table, we have a place for you in the war. We have ways for you to be fucking useful. I don't like people who are not useful. I don't mind if people take a day off. People need to have a way to get out of the situation that they live in and not be so consumed with the rage on television. This is why I remind people it is cognitive warfare, full blown cognitive warfare, just like when I guess I have to open my tablet so I can see all the little fine tuned stuff you guys say, because I don't want to miss what you say. But the finding your place in that widget is very important. I see Arcadian. Hello, Mr. Sampson. Hello. And to my Greek brother, who's awesome. Let's see. I'm going to see. I don't see Shaun in here yet, but he may be working on the script. Hold on. Let's see. Shaun Penna, our wonderful British brother. Shaun is doing great journalism. I knew that he would do it. When he told me he had to pivot over from commentary as a soldier and that experience to being, more of a journalist, I had no doubt he could do it, because journalism is not rocket science. All differences in journalism is that you're taking the time to figure out underneath the hood what's really going on. Say something a little deeper than the sky is blue right now and there is no rain. That's what reporting is. But if you say, and because of that today, you're already halfway there. You're already beginning to make a progress between the last people who took up my time being reporters, and I cannot stand bad reporters, and people who take a little bit more effort and learn about what's going on and give you a perspective. So Donald Trump, Coca-Cola, and Ukraine. Chris has coffee. Actually, I broke my pact. I broke my pact and bought one more Coca-Cola for tonight because I'm very tired, actually. But we have coffee. We have Sean Penner. That's enough. Oh, look
Sean
at that.
Penner.
We went full t-shirt mode. I am so glad I did not put my Vichy vodka on, because I was almost going to. I said, I'm going to just go like raw t-shirt. Tilki futbolka. And you got your AC/DC rocking, homie.
Yeah, we're going smart cash tonight. This is my smart cash.
So, where do we start?
Oh
man, there's a lot of shit in
we,
the fucking space, dude.
I tell you, I mean, we didn't finish it all on Friday, but I
No.
mean, it hasn't everything we said on Friday just materialized over the last 48 hours. I mean, we've just trimmed it down now to really America's shadow war. Clearly, there's an alignment. Clearly, there's the Trump administration, Witkoff, Caroline Leavitt, all on the same page, saying the same thing. I don't know where. I mean, let's start with Caroline Leavitt's press conference that was just horrible to listen to. To hear it, to Witkoff to then repeat exactly line for line, really is. I don't know how to put it. Really, there's a contradiction between supporting Ukraine and that they're trying to portray under this guise of peace, with actually, pretty much siding on the same side, as Russia. I mean, you hit the nail on the head when you said, would they be this sympathetic to ISIS?
Right.
And remember, this is a country that's stolen children, 20,000 children, committed the worst atrocities you've ever seen.
Right.
Since World War II, at least, torture, starvation of POWs, executions. I was in a prison with kids, 19-year-old lad who was a train driver. He was being beaten, electrocuted. You've got, what you've seen on the front lines, the indiscriminate bombing of hospitals, schools. This is like 25,000 civilians just killed in Mariupol, and that's a conservative estimate, women and children. 6 million forced refugees, 6 million still probably the occupied territories. You've got, 1 million, not even just the Ukrainian dead and injured. You've got, 1.2 million Russians dead and killed. And what does Witkoff call it? A silly war.
Motherfucker. And I tell this story often about my Ukrainian mom getting on me about a year and a half ago. It was before the midterm. No. Yeah, it was before the midterms. Trump wasn't in office yet, but at 2:00 in the morning, I was telling probably Twitter Spaces about what's going on, and she gets in my face in the morning like, what the fuck? No shoti, bro. Oh, what were you doing up at 2:00 in the morning? Yelling out the window. And I said, I'm so sorry. Well, I was talking about Americans and the aid. Oh, okay. She just walked away because she totally understood. The idea that Americans, and I don't mean like the good Americans. We know I don't mean the good Americans. I mean that the American position, the American stability.
Yeah.
And she said that, she understood, but a lot of people here actually don't quite understand what the fuck happened with America. The America that they idealize, where they have this here. You'll have like Indiana University t-shirts on, likely because it's cheap, but still it's America. They don't have Moscow University on, right? They idealized us, and then we betrayed that. And then you have Steve Witkoff going up and negotiating away the sovereignty of another country while saying, and we're going to represent with the peace plan, that the first line in the motherfucking peace plan is respecting Ukraine's sovereignty, which means everything else in the 28-point list didn't matter because all of them are violations of sovereignty. You can only have this many people in the army. You're going to have an election. You're going to have to do whatever Russia wants. And then we're going to, and I hate this word to use, consummate it. That usually means you fuck on your wedding night.
I thought he said constipated first, but then it was like consummate it. I was like, what? I don't know what to say. I mean, it's not. We've covered it on plenty of times. He's not a diplomat. He's a property developer.
He's a property developer, right?
And what people probably don't realize, like me and you sort of understand, and anyone's been in the military here, that there would have been a psychiatric evaluation, of his, to deem whether he was who they would want to negotiate with, and they would have picked the weakest person in that eval, which is why they got Witkoff. Witkoff's just a cheese ball. I mean, he said today, or was it today or yesterday, he's not been, Putin's been down the line with him. I mean, this is a guy that's
he's
spent
straight
25
up with me
years.
Every time I've talked to him, he's been straight up with me.
It's like
when we're together and I use no translator, I mean, we're great. He never lies to me.
And then I was looking at Klitschko just before we came on.
Oh,
and, the news guy just went, "So, do you trust Trump?" And that's this like 2 minutes silence where he's going, I don't know. He doesn't mix his words normally, and I was thinking, yeah, you're just saying what we're all feeling. There's no trust in this Trump administration. Clearly, they're whitewashing, especially Witkoff and Caroline Leavitt, are just just whitewashing atrocities, which, for Trump, who thinks that Ukrainians like Witkoff, I mean, everybody, you've seen social media today, everyone was just screaming at him,
Yeah.
even Meghan Mobs today was going, look, I appreciate what you're trying to do, Mr. Trump, but this was just disgusting, what Witkoff said. And she's we talked about her before, she's pretty 50-50, So, what he said was just, and I'm interested in what other people think about this too. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
this is just a show now. It's we talked about it before. If Russia, if America does go after Iran, that's the peace deal done anyway.
Well, Joe Rogan
yeah.
bailed, right? Joe Rogan said he can't. I love this. I love this. Joe Rogan, who I have to admit has the ear of a lot of people that I really like in my life, and they'll tell me that they like it because, well, it's kind of like debate, and I'll go with that for a minute. I know that's not an accurate term of it, but it is how common people sit around talking about politics. They don't have necessarily a way of expressing it more sophisticated than that. And if I want to transform parts of America into a thoughtful, productive machine, I have to understand where they start, and that's where they start for many folks. The guys who drive around, like my friends who did work for the gas company, listen to AM radio in their trucks as they go around doing the work that they do during the day, and that's what they have available. And it was either Joe Rogan or the Rush Limbaugh knockoffs, and he doesn't sound like a Rush Limbaugh knockoff. That's what makes him appealing to people who might have otherwise been sucked up into that vortex. And I came from Pacifica Radio, which is lefties who scream in the mirror about how everything's bad and they don't talk to anyone else but themselves. So they don't know how to reach out to that crowd. The home of democracy now, the home of Code Pink types. And when Joe Rogan doesn't sleep at night, I fucking love that, because I don't sleep very well at night either. But Joe Rogan said, it's too much for me. I can't hack it with the idea we'll go to war with Iran. And that's good news, actually, because there are other people who would just nod and go along with Joe Rogan. And, they follow the thought leader of the day, who is basically a muscle-brained, super genius. And
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
So kind with the words.
It's terrible, isn't it? Because if we went on Substack, I'd be swearing all over the place right about
Thank God we're not on that platform.
So controlled, it's like, no, I'm with you. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the Iranian regime. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and I wasn't a fan of the Venezuelan, the machine there either. I just don't know where America's going with this, sudden change of flexing. And this is another Russian ally, Iran, and I don't want to get too much into that because we got our hands full with this, but, it is, it is, you've heard China. Will China get involved? China have condemned this. Where do we go with that? I mean, we've talked about this not being a regional conflict anymore. This is now a world conflict, but people are just choosing not to call it that, trying to play it down. But I mean, when you've got someone like Witkoff who's so away with the fairies, to put it bluntly, he's so disillusioned, never been to Ukraine, doesn't really understand the political situation, is trivializing all the destruction, is trivializing the fact that what this means to Europe, is trying to whitewash over the atrocities. There's, America isn't on this player anymore. It's just not. There's something, deeply troubling when, someone like Witkoff is in charge of peace in Gaza and, in the Middle East, who's the first person Trump goes to.
Oh, well, yeah, he said in that interview with the human blow up sex doll blowjob lady, Laura Trump. And I don't know why all those women look the same now in the Trump orbit, but they look terrible. I know real women who don't look like that. But she allowed him to say that, here's what's going to happen with Gaza. We're going to level all of it. It'll all be rebuilt. And he idealized the city better than the city of Houston I come from. Like, we don't have mass transportation in Houston because gasoline is still a commodity everyone wants to have to stay beholden to. I have better transportation in Kyiv. And he's like, we're going to have mass transportation. We're going to have all these things. And I'm just making a list like, hey, yeah, Houston, okay, we have a list of voting things here. So apparently Gaza will have better shit than you do. And for whom? He didn't say for whom. He didn't say for Palestinians. He says we're going to have. He didn't even explain that. So this is pie in the sky bullshit. It'll never happen.
In all
Much
this,
like
like the
the
12
East Wing will
trillion,
not
isn't
be
it?
rebuilt. East Wing of the White
Absolutely.
House will not be rebuilt by the time that Donald Trump leaves the office.
It's like the 12 trillion that Russia hasn't got that's promised Trump. I mean, it's bizarre.
Right.
You know, that he's so out of touch. Look at what his reaction to the tariffs, the you know, the Supreme Court. I mean, he's had a meltdown, an absolute meltdown. This is
He's threatened his own beholden judges. These guys are the most beholden, you know, like bootlickers you could possibly have in a court that just give him pretty much everything he wants, except for occasionally go, okay, well, here's a line. You're disloyal. Okay, gotta go with you. You're done. Even Uncle Thomas is not going to be allowed to do anything.
Yeah. The computer says no. I mean, it's just, I mean, Witkoff is so compromised in all this.
Right.
And, you know, the diplomatic office is just non-existent as far as you can see on any of it. Not to mention, you know, there's talk of, you know, Witkoff being bankrolled by Kirill Dmitriev, who's, you know,
right.
Russia's money man. I mean, it's like, there's such a conflict of interest in all this. I think we're just coming to a head in this. I think people are starting to realize that, you know, the Trump administration will never go to war with Russia, even if they're signed these
USSA. I like your romances. The USSA. Oh, God.
Yeah. There's just no way.
Thank you,
the Trump administration would never go to war.
Everyone who's making comments, we are able to read the comments. So
we are. We like the comments.
We want to thank you for being here, number one, and we're reading the comments. So you give us good fodder. I want to back up to the article that I wrote about Witkoff that got some attention months ago when I said his whole position is illegitimate. Literally illegitimate.
Yeah.
And I did a bit of deep dive into what does it take to be the special envoy, because I don't know all things about state policy. I have to learn as I go along. And I dug into the fact that in history, our founders 250 years ago had a similar problem where everyone had their own self-appointed diplomat to send to Europe. You know, Thomas Jefferson had one, Ben Franklin had one, and they would all go over and make these deals. And a lot of them were corrupt deals of favoritism. And let's remind ourselves, it was evolving out of a particular era of monarchy and royalty favoritism. So common people working in the fucking farms didn't have shit. So those people who were intellectual had more favor. And they were making backroom deals a lot. And some of them wound up being scandals in the first years of the founding you know, country known as the United States. So they took the time to say, yeah, okay, here's what we can't fucking do. Just random appointments. We want to have a little bit of an oversight of that from the Senate. And there is room for the president to have some delegation that he can choose, but he can't just randomly pick a guy out and say, okay, that's my special envoy to go handle crisis in other countries. That's why we have ambassadors that get approved by Congress, you know, and this guy is essentially running ad hoc with no legal status to do so. And even more so, no legal status to demand shit from Ukraine, but he's doing it. And I've been warning about this for a while. When you lend agreement to something, and that's a very important phrase for people to internalize, lending agreement. If you have something untrue and you lend agreement, it becomes true, you know, and it exists as if true. And that's what's happening with Steve Witkoff.
Absolutely. I mean, look at SignalGate. You touched on it. You know, the only reason you want to use Signal or in the Russians' case, Telegram, and Witkoff and who's the other Pete Hegseth got caught. The only reason you're going to use Signal is to not use, you know, to avoid using proper protocol. Why are you doing that? Why are you not using proper? Why aren't you using skiffs? Why aren't you using secure comms? Why are you using Signal? So you know, that's to get round something. So both both Witkoff, they've been doing that since they came into to government. Where's the discipline?
Christine says properly, Kushner has no legitimacy either. Spot on, Christine.
Yeah, Kushner has no legit. He's probably even more compromised, to be fair.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's just they're now taking the lead on all foreign policy chats and negotiations, which is deeply worrying. Because when let's say Trump does go, are they going to hand over that? Who are they going to hand over to? The State Department? Or, those chats, are they minuted? I doubt that.
Well, also, 12 years ago when the Russians were running their ground game to seize Crimea and the Donbass, I have a lot of these emails thanks to amazing Ukrainian hackers. And those hackers, they got a hold of these emails. The Surkov leaks is the most famous version of those. And in the Surkov leaks, there are a lot of emails that are running through .ru official government stuff. And then there are others that are running in private emails in the same way we're talking about with the American administration. And it does raise questions if they have official accounts, and we already know Russia's government's corrupt, but they're running conversations simultaneous between the two. They have conversations that are happening about real big state information in official channels, and then they have some that are in private channels. And in America, it is absolutely verboten. You cannot, and that means forbidden for all the unsophisticated people like me. I don't know why the word forbidden.
Good morrow.
I'm so sorry, everyone. It just had to come out that way. But they had, we've had major scandals in America over the last 20 years that entirely got worse because someone decided to run with a different set of comms. And they had to have known it.
Yeah. I mean, the only reason he's still in a job after the transcripts got released of, Witkoff talking to, quite senior people in the Russian leadership is because he's friends with Trump. There's no disciplinary for that. There's nothing. It's like SignalGate just doesn't exist. Where is the discipline? I mean, I saw, was it, they were on a committee talking about it, but what actually happened because of it? How would it discipline? No, nothing. So, it's just, there's no trust in the Trump administration at ground level. Like you said on Friday, I've not met one person who seriously thinks there's going to be any peace from this peace process. And you've got Witkoff today again saying, we're just weeks away from Zelensky meeting, Putin. Now, Zelensky has said, I'll meet Putin. But remember, Putin has pretty much said that this is a Nazi regime. It's an illegitimate leader. It's come to denazify. He wants Kyiv. If he meets Zelensky, let's say he does, he's then legitimized Zelensky's leadership. Is he going to do that? No. Witkoff's swinging with the fairies again. I mean, he's talking garbage. Putin isn't going to put himself in a room with Zelensky in Europe somewhere. He's just not going to do it because that would go against everything he's said over the last 4 years.
Right. And by the way, I just put the list, the link to the Man Without a Mandate about Witkoff as a reminder for us. I have to go dig around it because
that's a good article, actually.
Thank you. It's fun to do those. They're basically my coffee morning brain exercises. And they're
Witless is a fucking idiot.
Witless. But I wanted to stick to one thing that's in the calendar, which is about Kyiv in 3 days, since we're 2 days away from the 4-year mark, and what it must be like to be sitting in the Kremlin, realizing how much have you thrown away, and how do you land the fucking plane?
We're back to that on Friday. How do you land it? I don't think they can land it at the moment. For those reasons we're talking about now, you've got. I think Putin said too much. I think he's annexed more territory than he can get hold of. I'm summarizing here. Annexed more territory they can actually take. He didn't expect the reaction from Ukraine. He didn't expect the support from Europe and America to an extent. I think he's done too much, and now he's set the economy, the Russian economy, on a war footing.
Right.
But 40% of their federal budget comes from oil and gas. So when you start whacking them like Ukraine's doing, and now 4 years in, firing yesterday 100 drones into Russia,
Right.
and now Flamingo lines up and running and firing those back into Russia and hitting more ammunition dumps, more nodes, and then they've got HIMARS on top of that when they can use them. And this is a different war, as we touched on Friday, to 2022. We've got our own problems with manpower. I don't care what anyone says. We are struggling with manpower, and we need that. We need infantry. We're not going to get. We're not going to break through places.
Yeah, you can't automate this war.
No, not fully.
As a soldier, I'm so glad that you're here to make it clear as a soldier.
Yeah.
It takes the infantry to do all that work.
It is, and Russia's now at a point where it's essentially it's quantity and poor training. And if you could train if Ukraine could train in-house rather than take the troops out and go to Germany and go to UK where they're training on programs like Interflex, you're speeding up that turnaround of Ukrainians. And if you can train them better, which inevitably they probably are compared to the Russians, skills take time. I've been a big critic of Ukraine's mobilization. I've been a big critic of how they've done it. I was a big critic of letting all your 18-year-olds go, as much as I got a lot of shit for it, about demographics. And you either want to defend your country, you want to win, or you don't. You don't want to get your, infantry is a young man's game, unfortunately. You're not going to win a war with 40-year-old infantrymen as much as you want to use the older generation. At the end of the day, you're going to have to use younger guys. It's a difficult decision that I wouldn't want to make personally. But outside, it's easy for me to say, look, you need all as pardon the American twang here. You need all the swinging dicks in the films. You need.
And mobilization is a wide term.
It is, yeah.
If used properly, it's a wide term that essentially means, like I said, I'm going to go back to the beginning of the program. Can you move a box from the right-hand side of the table to the left-hand side of the table?
People don't understand mobilization. When I say we should have done full mobilization when they crossed the border, what you're looking at is those 18-year-olds. You're not asking them to fight on the front lines. What you're doing is you're giving them a taste of what it is to load a gun and what it is to be a soldier. Maybe some of those might actually like it. Then they can go and do officer training, which takes 3 or 4 years to do correctly out here properly. You're then, in 2002, those officers would now be 4 years older, still probably not being able to fight because they're not 25 or 24. So you give them more training, extended training. You give people specialist training. Not everyone's cut out to be an infantryman. So you've got drones, you've got chefs, logistics, you've got intel, you've got communications. You've got a million different things you can do. If everybody from 18 to 60 was started training, back in 2022, what you've got now is you've got a shortfall of these people.
Let's look at some of the evolution. So in February 2022, I met Sersky and Pavlyuk, and Pavlyuk was in charge of ground forces. Our commander-in-chief for armed forces was Zaluzhny, and our minister of defense was Reznikov. And now we have Mikhailo Fedorov is in charge of Ministry of Defense, and he has a whole different way of approaching all of it. He's younger, he's spry. He headed up the Ministry of Digital Transformation, and that was everything from, for those who don't know how that works here in country, and you're down in Dnipro, the babusi can go up to these kiosks and use digital tools. They can use it on their phone to get their pension numbers, all these basics in their communications, to file forms, if you want to get married, all sorts of stuff that's all digitized. And I'm sure there's some complications that arise, but they work them out. They created a digital neural network for the country to be very efficient. But at the same time, with Brave One defense tech, they were looking at investors both in country and abroad to say, first we had the drone side of it, both FPV, UGVs, ground drones, and one of the missing parts came together. I went to an event in October that was the components section. So instead of how many times we've had people who have tried to go abroad to find servos for FPV drones and little parts in order to complete projects, and then those dry up, or there's sanction-oriented issues with that. So now we have people who are developing the various parts and circuit boards and chips domestically, and looking for outside investment to go more into that. And that's essentially the autonomy that Ukraine has had to have. So what do you think, being that you were a soldier starting in 2018, correct?
Well, British Army, 1991.
I mean, when was your first contract here?
2018, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So what's that evolution been like in your eyes from back then to now? How much has this country advanced? Because it seems like it's so off the charts that you would have to get someone who does calculus beyond an abacus.
Somebody just put what's the minimum draft age, and I'll just quickly answer that question because somebody's raised it. Men aged 25 to 60, and I had to double check myself because I know it's not quite as it seems. So do a 25 to 60 who are fit for service can be volunteer to call up for or be mobilised. Registration for military services begins when a male turns 17, but it doesn't mean they're going to be drafted until they reach legal age of draft. So they've got to get on the books, essentially. Voluntary services options exist for younger adults, like a contract service 18 to 24, but these are not compulsory drafts. Also, you're allowed to leave the country if you're a male between, I think it's 18 and 24. Or 22, I can't quite remember, it's 24 or 22, but you are able to leave the country. You're not tied in to staying here. So that should answer a bit of your question. Excuse me. The change has been considerable. When I first got here in 2018, Ukraine's military was very much stuck in Soviet doctrine. There was no emphasis or really high regard for senior NCOs or NCOs. They were there, but generally you got promoted if you were big and you could beat up 10 people. There was no real every sort of lance corporal corporal I met was just a hard nut you wouldn't want to mess with, So there wasn't down. So the brainy lads never got the thinkers, the thinking soldiers rarely got a look in because it was all down to can you push 10 people along in the heat of battle. So by the time we'd done joint exercises, we'd worked with the Marines and I'd worked with Azov as an instructor there for 2 years. Azov were very forward thinking anyway. Those guys were looking to learn NATO tactics and skills, bringing new training regime, including SEER, which they didn't have, which for those who don't know, survival, evade, resist, and escape training, stuff for resistance training, things like that, specialist training courses. So we were bringing all that home. Those good boys could shoot, but they just lacked basic combat skills. They were too reliant on shooting apps like Strelok and the phones, Google Maps and things like that. They didn't know how to build their own maps. So essentially, fast forward to the start of the war, 2022, my guys our battalion was pretty good after we'd done 2 or 3 sea breezes, which is joint exercise with the Americans, Canadians, the Swedes, the Brits, done a lot of joint training exercises. By the time 2022 came around, it was different. The full corporals and sergeants, master sergeants here, I'm calling them British ranks, but it makes it clearer for an American and British audience. But lance corporals and corporals generally could fill in the gaps if senior people were, taken out. Because under Soviet doctrine, if you took out a sergeant, that's your platoon day. He's like the godfather, to be fair. You take out the officer, that's it. The platoon's gone, and completely gone.
I have a chapter one day that I've been pinning away from the first month of the war. And I always say the month of the war. I mean, starting in 2022 on that. It's called the Ballad of Sergeant Sergeant, and the Ballad of Sergeant Sergeant is based on the fourth checkpoint when we were coming back into Kyiv, and it was like something I'd never seen in my life. I'm not a former military guy. I'm a civilian counterterrorism guy. And it got darker and darker as you got into the hub of Kyiv. And when we hit that fourth checkpoint, this guy slows down a little bit further and he asks Andrei for the paperwork. Okay, okay, I'll be right back. And he walks away and he comes back and some little bit more. And I pull out my press badge like I'm all good, right? Yeah. What else paperwork you got? And Andrei goes, man, bro, what the fuck you want, bro? Like, so he gets upset and I go, what's going on? I don't know, man. This guy normally works at a fucking warehouse and today he's fucking in charge. Oh, so he's not just sergeant, he's sergeant sergeant? Sure. Oh yeah, he's sergeant sergeant. In other words, like just rank but no skills, rank but no ability to
unfortunately both armies are like this now.
Right, and that's what the Ballad of Sergeant Sergeant means. Someone who really throws the weight around, but doesn't have all that stuff that a real sergeant has earned.
No,
a real sergeant has earned that ability to take the guys and make them useful. A guy who's thrown in at a particular rank, a time served in order to do so, and quick mobilization. Like let's throw this on the Russian side, when they just basically rank them up out of nowhere in order to fill the gap. There is no experience in that rank.
No, and it's worse for the Russians. But generally, I mean, this war has taken 2 or 3 armies out. It's now people that you were washing our cars, IT workers, people that were doing other jobs being conscripted in. And being a sergeant takes time. You're the admin guy to help assist the platoon commander with training. You're the guy that's really focusing and and bringing the morale up the guys and essentially that takes a lot of time. You've got specialist skills like engineers and there's a massive shortage of combat engineers in Ukraine, massive shortage. So you can't replace those people overnight. It's very difficult. Again, Russia's on the offensive, so you're losing 15-1. At least, we talked about this Friday, so I won't go into that too much. But if you're losing 15 guys to what they've got some good units, they'll keep them back, but they're going to shove all the people they've just taken, conscripts, prisoners. They're going to bump them through to Storm's Heads and just chuck them. They're going to keep all the trained people back. So I don't think they've got that many trained people either. They're using submariners to attack positions, and drone operators to attack positions, and you can see them complaining on social media. So
I love watching them complaining.
This war's full of what I would call a lot of non-professional soldiers. It's guys that have had to learn on the job quickly, and that's why when you train soldiers up to go to the front, you need to train them better, equip them better than your enemy. And I think Ukraine generally, with who it's the training's being done with, I think it's going to be considerably better training, even though it had its niggly, stickly points at the beginning of this with intellects. And Ukrainians were coming back here going, they don't understand how we fight. I had to learn because I'd come from 9 years in the British Army, and fighting in trenches is something I did 2 weeks of that in my training. It's something I did a defense exercise in my training that lasted about 2 weeks. I had theory and then a 2-week exercise. You got guys, when I got out, they were going, that there's a well-known scene in Platoon where he goes, get rid of this, don't need that, put that down, take this, and I had that with the veteran. The Ukrainians are going, no, that's too wide. You can't get through the trenches with that. Strip that down, take that off. And I was thinking, oh, so bad. If I come as an instructor, and these guys are going, you really have no idea how to fight in trenches, do you? So it's something you have to learn, which again, most of these guys, they'd be doing it on the job. They won't have any experience in this. But if that was a choice, I'd rather be in an active defense than the aggressor. If I had a choice, do you know what I mean? Exactly. If you're going to attack trenches and you've never done it before, it's like Well, good luck with that, son.
Well, I don't know how many
Next.
different Americans I've talked to who said that once they got here, they came from the GWAT, and that everything that they did in order to fight the insurrectionists in Iraq or in Afghanistan was basically useless here because the tactics were so radically different and the terrain was different. They hadn't been fighting an artillery war. They hadn't been
No.
sitting in dugouts with FPV drones on optical cables, and
Yeah.
the person I worked with when I got here said I was a drone expert, and I'm a drone expert. But he made a point is that when ISIS started dropping munitions from their little cheap drones, they were annoying at best in the first round when they did that.
Mm.
Those first videos when they dropped them, but they got sophisticated. They got a little bit better, and they kept using different release devices and getting results. And but it was so far different than what we have now, where
Marcus
literally,
says he answered that.
yeah,
Sorry, Marcus just says trying to work as a team and learn that in a short period of time is exceptionally hard. He's right. It is exactly
that's right.
exceptionally hard to learn. And you know, if most of these
The
Russians
stuff that has to be on
2
rote
weeks,
memory, it has to be on
yeah,
neurological wiring memory.
yeah, and you're not going to do it in 2 weeks. You know, and
No
most of
way.
these guys, these Africans that are coming over for Russia, are just getting a couple of weeks training, give it a gun, and go. There you go, off you go. They have
Right.
no idea what they're going into.
But I was
I
just
mean,
looking
this
for a job in Moscow. I was going to get a job in Moscow. I didn't know this until I was in a truck and I was suddenly shipped to the front.
everybody who's caught is either a chef or a medic. So don't ever say you're a chef or a medic unless you're a chef or a medic because you'll get tested. And
Right.
you know, I was like, oh no, nobody wants to be the one who pulls the trigger. Trust me, I know. I know because I was captured and I was like, well, no, I'm just here for love. I married my wife, and I'm saying, yeah, of course you are. When you the instructor Azov, you know, you try your best, but you know, everybody's a chef or a medic when they're captured. That's just par for the course.
Right.
But I mean, even a chef and a medic, you can't learn a medic's job in 2 weeks. You got to do basic infantry skills 2 weeks, then you got to do TCCC combat medic
Right.
training. You can't do that in a couple of weeks, you know.
Right.
But I think you know, Ukraine are better at training, probably more thorough than the Russians at the moment. It's something
And
to look into for the next
when
episode,
it
actually.
comes to the bring it back to the American support system that failed and still fails. And I want to be very clear. I'm not of the school that the Biden administration was the worst thing ever, etc. I know without the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, where Lloyd Austin worked with Reznikov at the first and Zaluzhny, and they basically said, "What do you need?" And then he assembled all these nations into an alliance that was not an alliance on paper. We do not have alliances on paper. People, when they forget this, an alliance is a formal contract between two countries, officiated at their parliament and or Congress level. That's a
Mhm.
serious commitment, right? But as close to that as possible, the closest thing to NATO that Ukraine has ever had in its entire history is the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, which even included like Cambodia giving sapper training,
Mhm.
Colombians giving sapper training, giving over everything they can to complete that the widget assembly. Now, what did that do ultimately? It gave Ukraine resources it did not have in the material. But what happens later is that Mike Johnson holds up all that aid until April 2024. And I
Mm.
know so many young guys that did not join the forces, including our NatSec media teammate Alex Solomaka. That we did a lot of great journalism. Love working with that guy. And then the moment that bill passed, and the moment that those materials would be available here in country, he signed up for the ZSU. He signed up with the army because now the materials by which they could go fight the fucking war were there. Instead of men going out with
Yeah.
no BMPs, no equipment, nothing to be able to do anything effective. And that's why cutting it off now or playing games with it is the exact opposite of Trump getting the win he thinks he wants to brag about.
Yeah, well, then you come back full circle, don't you, to, you know, they're wanting
That's
results that the battlefield can't give them at the moment,
Well,
you
that's
know?
because that's what I had here was come back full circle.
No,
or we get.
I didn't even know that. Yeah, we just come back full circle,
I just drew that. I did.
Yeah, okay, yeah, just literally. I mean, you come back full circle. They're trying to push things that are just not. The battlefield's not ready. You've got no ceasefire. So the actual hits across the cities in Ukraine are escalated, not deteriorated. You've got Putin as pretty much a Lavrov, his mouthpiece. He's pretty much said they're going to push through with the SMO, and then you've got Witkoff coming in going, actually, they're going to meet next week. They could meet in 3 weeks if they really wanted to. I mean, he's so off the chart, off the pace. He should be removed from this whole thing. But what you've got now is other countries see that, like Hungary.
I have a great role
Slovakia.
for Steve Witkoff. They should reboot the Walking Dead series and throw him into the first episode. And I'm very clear about this. There are ways we can make people very efficient, and it saves a lot of money when it comes to the casting.
It's just the guys are politically inept. I mean, it's just I can't keep calling him names because I mean he hasn't got to where he's got to because he's daft. He's just out of his league here. It's like, but the conflict of interest is the real problem. Do you know what I mean? It's massive.
But I think I'm gonna push back on that just one way. In that, look who he works with, and I shut down a MAGA Trump supporter. First of all, I want to acknowledge what Maka's wrote in here, that Ukraine is building its own vehicles now, and that is so true. There are so many things that are being built here, plus with private investment from abroad helping to really push that. That is the game changer, and that has a lot to do with Trump fucking over. But a guy back in 2016 who said he didn't believe the Trump Russia stories, and he was clearly MAGA, and he was clearly very much money. And this is in Fort Lauderdale, which is basically the home of that type of real estate market, right? And I hit him. I was on a good day where suddenly the brain cells kicked in and answered the question properly. I said, "You developed property in Russia according to your board resume when you wanted to be the condo board, right?" "Yeah." "And how many did you do?" "Oh, about 5 or 6." "5 or 6 what? They're like, different size, pretty good size buildings, or well, business complexes too." So, "And how many has Trump built?" And that's all I had to fucking say, because he never built a fucking thing after Trump Tower Moscow dangled in front of him from 88 on, right? Didn't complete any of it. It's the pitch. It's the pitch. It's the pitch. You don't have to finish anything. That's why I said the East Wing will never be finished until the next administration completes that shit. Someone else will come along and do that. And I know these types. They pitch up a good product. They get people to invest, and then they walk away with that money, and nothing gets built. The Russians do this all the fucking time. This is what corruption is all about. It's take the money, pitch, take the money, pitch, take the money, pitch. Now, in the case of Witkoff, his only experience being in real estate means he has so many parts of diplomacy missing in order to complete this widget that, yes, he has to be removed from that role, and a real person is going to have to come in and do that. And I just don't see that Trump has the wherewithal to allow someone else in the bootlicking administration to do that. He fired all those people. Every person that would have come up and told him something sober were in the last administration.
And it's like these meetings like we saw today. It's like that MAGA elite is just patting itself on the back, giving itself awards, giving itself contracts, patting them on the back again. It's like this small circle of numpties. It's like that film Don't Look Up. It's just like those guys. So what are we talking about? We're talking about, the world. It's a global killer.
Yeah.
I don't like 100%. Maybe it's like 60% global killer. No, it's going to kill the globe. It's just that ridiculously stupid. They're coming across as ignorant and stupid anyway. But, it's days like this. But now you've got Orban and Fico jumping on this now with, the election coming up. Every other tweet now is Ukraine. He sees Ukraine in his sleep. He does.
So let's pivot a little bit to that, because, you remember we were talking last week, I mentioned that I had combed over the Transparency Corruption Index numbers. And I don't just look at Ukraine. Oh, look, Ukraine is going up, which is great. Ukraine is going up. It is now 12 years today that Yanukovych got the fuck out of Ukraine, where he lost his shit. Basically, all of his legitimacy here was over, and he got on a plane and took off to Moscow. Or as my friend Sergey said, no, it was a whirlybird. I said, okay, so he got on a helicopter and got the fuck out. But the corruption has always been something that Ukraine was tackling. It's been on the upward mobility, the upward improvement, if you will, for 25 years at least. And it really went up after 2014 because people really understood they had to deal with it. Now, Russia wants all these countries to be at the bottom with them, which is where Russia's at. It's so fucking way down in the list.
Come down to our level.
Yeah, only South Sudan is the bottom one. Come down to our level. And we said this with Frank Figluzzi last night. The bottom is the goal. And if you bottom that out, and this is what the Transparency Corruption Index model is all about. These are investors. These are the big investors that go into every country to do something about electricity or oil or minerals. And they basically weigh the risk factor of saying, what is the risk of putting my money into this? And they need a metric by which they make this decision, right? So Hungary, on the way down.
Yeah, I saw you.
Slovakia on the way down. And the United States really on the way down. And that's who's bitching the most. Now, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Give us our oil.
It's contradictory. I mean, what did he say today? Ukraine is under constant bombardment, yet it's painted as the problem. Orban said today, Ukraine is only in it for the money, basically. I was like, livid. Like, this is another one who's just signed up to the board of peace. Trump's. I just don't know how to put it politely. Trump's a little bitch, I suppose. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it's just, and he's joking around with Argentinian guy, Miles. I can't remember his name now.
Right.
Jesus Christ! I mean, it's just Orban is potentially is down in the polls at the moment. So everything's about, and I believe Russians hit the pipeline. And now they're threatening by Monday to cut off electricity sales to Ukraine for what?
Right.
Russia's invading, so I think a lot of people now are really protesting. Especially, after I talked to you on Friday, I did a live stream to a theatre in Prague, which was quite interesting. And then the next day I saw the pictures of, the hundreds and hundreds of people that were out marching in Prague in support of Ukraine. And Orban today saying, well, Czechoslovakia, they're on our side. And I was thinking, just seeing the social media posts, look at the pictures of the hundreds and hundreds of people out there protesting because they're in support of Ukraine. So, I went to Hungary recently, about a year ago, for New Year's Eve. I couldn't find one Orban supporter, and they were telling me that most of them come from the country they're shipped in from the countryside, but generally they, I couldn't find one in Budapest that was actually a supporter of Orban, which should tell you everything. The cities, I think, generally are a little different to the countryside. So, you're seeing a lot of support, but, these people are starting to pick a side more openly because of how America's playing these peace talks, because of what they're doing, because you've got, people like Witkoff playing down Russian atrocities. So they're getting braver, in fact. This episode we said on Friday was about, it's turning. Russia's actually not. They're not in the same place as they were in 2022. They are essentially losing the propaganda war. Otherwise, if he was winning, he wouldn't be reigning in Western social media. He wouldn't care.
Right. And I was very blessed. I'll weave in two people at once here. Let's see if I can still do this. So I was at an energy briefing on Thursday with Oleg Skripka, who's a really super smart guy about what's happening with grid. And I asked him after the briefing when this threat happened, I texted him last night, and he said, essentially, his answer was, altogether, Hungary and Slovakia provide more than half of our connection to the EU grid. But If they do this, there will be a super case breaking the EU energy solidarity rules. In other words, like maybe they'll do this, but there are other standards by which they're going to have to violate. So they're waving their dicks around in front of everybody that they're going to just get to do something, but they too, as members of the EU, don't get to act unilaterally. And I think that I don't know these rules. I'm learning on the fly. Um, but I think that we will get to see whether or not they get to do this and are there results. And one of the biggest results should be that the other European countries that take this serious need to start really slamming down hard on Hungary first. And I think
Yeah.
by hitting Hungary first, the most corrupt country in the EU, by the way, um, the one only two notches above that is Slovakia. Slovakia will have to get the message.
I think they're not doing it yet because there's an elections coming up. So I think,
Right.
that could. I
With
think
compromat, no less.
I think. I mean, Hungary's got its own problems with,
Right.
like I said to you earlier, schools and what's happening with the kids there. I'm not going to go into graphic details of it, but it's got its own Epstein. It's dealing with that under Orban's regime, which is
Right.
what his opposition leaders now campaigning on. So they're going through. He's down in the polls, but Trump's there endorsing him. Rubio's gone over straight after the Munich Security Conference and gone over there to endorse him.
Immediately went to the two worst countries. Immediately.
The two countries that are Russian simps. The governments in there who support Russia or are more leaning towards
what
Russia.
Kind of Cuban wants to suck up to that? What kind of Cuban? This is what always throws me off about Marco Rubio as a Cuban, because I come from Texas, and when I went to Florida, it was a little bit of a culture shock when it came to the radio market there. Very, 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 very right wing against communism, and in a bullshit way, because it's whatever. And you would think, like, well, if you hate communism so much, wouldn't you want to not suck up to Russia? Or the way in which Russia basically manipulated Cuba for its own aims, that should be like a DNA level resistance inside of Marco Rubio. But obviously he's an empty stuffed shirt. And that's being friendly.
Argue. I know.
I'm being so
We're
friendly.
so friendly on this show.
So friendly tonight.
We're so friendly and so PC. It's unreal. Yeah. I mean, I don't know where to go. I mean, you can't. This all stems from the political framing around the peace. If Trump's befriending or going to visit countries that are seen to be in support of Russia, still buying cheap fuel and really putting money into the war coffers. Europe needs to stop buying anything Russian and stop doing this shit too. Everything. There needs to be an absolute stop on buying anything Russian. No ifs, buts, and maybes. I did hear at the Munich Security Conference that Europe's bought more off Russia than it's supplied Ukrainian aid, military aid. So, that's got to stop. I don't know how true that is, but I listened.
No, it's pretty solid, yeah.
So I'm just sitting there saying, all that has to stop. I know that we're now tackling the Shadow Fleet. We're now tackling that. Even America's stopped, ships of the Shadow Fleet. So I know that's going on, but it's not enough. You can stop this world if we stopped just buying anything Russian. This war would put so much pressure on that it'd have to stop, but we don't.
This is what frustrates me with the MAGA audience, who, and I said this in the first year, who don't want anything to do with us. And I go, okay, so I always try to start where they're at, which is really dumb, but I had to do it. So you didn't like doing this. Let's go back in time when you first didn't want to do this in the first Trump administration, and you didn't want to do this, and so you didn't. You hedged that number down. And Obama only had basically 2 years to do anything. All the sanctions we live under now, or I say we live under, that we apply to Russia now, come from 3 executive orders, all filed under the Obama administration in the first months of the full scale, of the first months of the original part of the invasion. And they're compounded by only one additional one under Trump and an act of Congress. Now, the CAATS filed in August 2017. So you didn't pay your insurance on your house the first time, right? And your garage burned down, right? Okay, well, we're rebuilding your garage and you still haven't paid your fucking insurance on your house. And now there's an arsonist outside. Yeah. How much do you want to pay this time? So at what point are you going to wake the fuck up and realize if you don't pay into making sure that this fire stops, that you're going to be in better shape? And they don't fucking get this. They just keep hoping it happens somewhere else and somewhere else. And it's going to
Yeah.
eventually hemorrhage America even further because America cannot understand that it lives in a global economy, in a global situation, that by not taking care of preventive measures that would have, for instance, saved the lives of Ukrainians, clearly, you're going to pay that bill eventually anyway because we are an interlocking system in the world, period.
Yeah.
We are,
More
whether you
so
like it or
now
not.
than ever. Yeah, more so now than ever. I mean, somebody
Pay
just
it
said
now, and you're going to save money later. Win it
so,
now, and you will save money later.
somebody just said we should stop them coming into Europe on business and pleasure.
Yeah.
That would stop a lot of put a lot of pressure on Putin. Putin is under a lot of pressure, as we talked about on Friday. He's under more pressure than I ever remember in my lifetime. His economy is teetering. His army's ground down in Donbass. 4 years after it started to take Kyiv. There's so much going on in Russia now. People in Russia are starting to ask questions. Russian mill bloggers are starting to ask questions. People are getting jailed more. Mill bloggers are getting jailed. Politicians are now being jailed. Generals are dying. He's under a lot of pressure that we very rarely talk about in the West. We don't talk about in the capacity of Russia losing this war. Well, here's a shocker. Ukraine does.
Let's see if I can get this audio to work. Hold on. Will it work?
Oh,
hold on. Lorenzo said there's a reaction from outside. What do you feel that the reaction in support of you across the world has said to Russia, to the IOC? What do you think that the reaction says most about what you've done? Дякую вам.
Thank you for your kind words. I think this reaction also shows that IOC was exposed, and I think this support in this reaction, it's a strong sign that world doesn't want to tolerate such a behavior, and I understand that many countries and many organizations doesn't want to act now because still there are athletes competing on these Olympic Games. But I think after Olympics is finished, I believe that IOC will have a lot of problems. I also believe that sponsors of partners of IOC also not satisfied, let's say in such a manner, but not satisfied with the actions of IOC. I believe all people who at least read any document and any official decisions, they understand that it was purely absurdity, because at the end of the day, it was personal interpretation of some people in IOC towards me. And I believe also it was very discriminational interpretation. And I think in this world, discrimination is not thing which is tolerated in any way.
So, real quick, I want to capitalize where we're going with that. With Vladislav, I asked him what the world response says to him. The fact that people that was Vladislav Herskevich. And I said, what do you think that the world reaction to the support that came for you, where it was rooted? Because the way I see it is that, like you said, Putin is losing on this terrain. Is that the world understands at a gut level what these items mean? And I have a thesis. I mentioned it last night when I was bitching at 5:00 in the morning. You can't stop a genocide when you have tickets to the Bolshoi. You can't stop the genocide when you are hosting the poets and you're hosting the sports figures and you keep giving them a fucking chance to be at the goddamn table and normalizing them. And you wouldn't do that if it was the ISIS sports team, if it was the ISIS chess club. You wouldn't let them at the table. That's a no-brainer.
ISIS chess club, I like that.
Yeah. So it's so the this is part of what active measures, and people forget these items. that active measures in the 60s and 70s, activity мероприятия, were initiatives designed to normalize Russian activity inside of normal process across the world, where subversive behavior would take place so that you couldn't stop the other actions. And that's what we have exactly right now.
Well, we talked about Fifth Column on Friday, didn't we?
Yeah, exactly.
That those people that don't always know that they're actually working for another state. I mean, quite possibly that could be in the Olympic Committee. So
yeah.
It's not just, but that's all what we're talking about. Getting people to maybe go away and think about is the normalization starts with the most powerful country in the world and the president of the most powerful country in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's normalizing all these, like they have done these last 48 hours with poor old Russians are dying. Hold on a minute. Putin was the one who decided to invade. Is it poor old Putin too?
Right.
Would you have the same sympathies for ISIS? No. So, it starts with the head of the most powerful country in the world. And then you get the IOC, then you get FIFA. FIFA's now on the board of, the board of peace. Board of peace.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the worst named board of anything, I think. So you've literally now got the head of this who's trying to whitewash Russian atrocities, where now you've got the IOC and FIFA now people are questioning those organizations. How could you let people compete under their flags in the Paralympics? I mean, it's disgusting. It's not. I know not every athlete is involved, but it's your country that who's committing genocide in Ukraine. It's your country that we're seeing these people being starved when they're coming out of Russian prisons, like they've been in Japanese war camps. It's the kids that you've stolen. At least give them something. Give us back all the kids, and then maybe we could talk about Olympics and FIFA. It's not even gone that far. They've done nothing to warrant competing under their nation's flag. And that is disgusting. And he's right. If you watched X, you would think Russia has conquered Ukraine 3 times over.
Yeah.
And that's the problem you've got.
That's why I like this platform. We don't have to worry about that anymore. I'm over here with awesome people saying awesome things. I want to go to one item we had in the list here, which was the difference between the political timelines and the military realities.
Yeah, I mean, we touched on it before. I mean, you've got, let me write this down. You've got the midterms. You've got Orban's election coming up.
Right.
And you've got essentially the fact that Zelensky, one of the reasons that Putin won't meet him is because he's illegitimate. He hasn't had an election. So they're pushing the Americans and the Russians, as Zelensky said, and we all know, is they're pushing the same line, which is equally as disgusting. So they're trying to push an elections onto a Ukrainian president that's being invaded and attacked by Russia. And America, who's meant to be this, standoffish peace negotiator, is taking the same line as Russia. Trump has put an immense amount of pressure on Zelensky, quite in the media, quite a bit, saying, you've got to get on with making a deal. I mean, it's just, I don't know where to really go from it. That you can't. The political decisions that are happening globally now are pushing for this. So Trump wants this before his midterms. He wants success. He knows he's going to crumble. He wants a Nobel Peace Prize. He knows his midterms. He's looking at a disastrous midterms. So he wants this, whatever cost, even to Ukrainians, to get this peace deal under the table. What's happening is Putin doesn't want peace, but has convinced Trump that he does. And now dangling trillions of dollars of fake business to maybe draw it out that little bit longer, So we're in a sort of catch-22 where, I don't even think that it's ignorance anymore. I think the Trump administration are now complicit in taking the line of Russia, without being too overt. So it's a real you can't get peace. There's not even a ceasefire. We got to keep reminding people. Witkoff today was saying, we're so close to peace. There's no ceasefire, no guarantees. None of those guarantees, if they were, have gone through anybody's parliaments yet. Nobody knows anything about the securities. Can we trust the securities of the Americans? Will they go to war with Russia if they come back again? No, is the answer right now. Most people would say, no, you can't trust the Trump administration. They're not going to go to war with Russia. So we're caught in this, ever decreasing sort of going back full circle, because we're not getting anywhere. This peace deal is just, I can't see. The one question I keep getting asked is, what do you think? How do you think it's going to go, Shaun? Do you think we're going to get peace? And I'm like, no, I can't effing see any peace at the moment.
Right.
There were the same people that were saying that we've only got one thing to sort, which is territory. It's the main reason why they're at war in the first place. And it's been going on since 2014. So, to say you're nearly there with peace and we haven't even got a ceasefire is just we've agreed the parameters of the ceasefire. So we're making good progress. No, Russia could stop and pull back any day. They could do it tomorrow. Let's be honest, they could do it tomorrow if they wanted to. They would go, okay, Mr. Zelensky, we're going to call a ceasefire. Let's raise a ceasefire. We're going to pull back tomorrow. They're not doing it.
Yeah, and I brought this up in previous conversation. I don't know if it was our conversation, but I think so because you served in the military before the full scale started. Is that my friend Volodymyr Zemchukov, otherwise known as the Luhansk partisan, says ceasefire has consequences for partisan warfare and those in occupation. Because during Minsk II, when everything was slowly monitored, it was always applied to Ukraine, whereas Russia would never play fair. They're not going to abide by it. And it tied the hands of those in occupation who had to use whatever means necessary to stop the murdering, to stop the raping and pillaging. And so all these things sound good. And it sort of brings back to why Russia runs this model. And I want to call back Macher's comment is further up, where she said, where we're selfish. And that's why we have this, so like meaning that the people who abroad, their own interests are applied harder. And this is where the soft power of active measures or reflexive control, as it's called now often, are applied in that, if I make you stare at your navel, you're useless. If I make you enjoy your latte more than doing the effective thing, you become useless. And there's a lot of interest in not just Russia wanting that, but Trump in America or others in Europe trying to get you to focus on some selfish measure that keeps you from paying attention to the big picture.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about that no end of times as well, how, just a quote from, we talked about Putin being under so much pressure, but it could take a quote from Trump like Zelensky needs to pull his finger out with peace, and that takes all the media. Mm-hmm. Then you don't hear even the bombing that's going on in the Dnipro or the attacks last night here that you got up in Kyiv. You don't hear about it because something like Steve Witkoff comes on and says, oh, well, it's a silly war. Bang, there goes all the social media up because, Witkoff's calling it a silly war, and a terrorist attack in Lviv doesn't even make the headlines. That's killed 1 and 29 injured. So, it is. These are drawing the attention away from and shielding Putin in a way, because
and there's a troll army pushing the bullshit. I noticed today they were out in force.
They are. I mean, it's going to get worse with Orban's election. Those trolls are going to be out for Orban's election. They're going to be out before the midterms.
Right.
And so, like I said, if you get your news from X, you'd have thought Russia had conquered Ukraine 6 times over. And you've got to ask yourself, why are all the Russians, despite all the bans, still on flipping X? Well, how to get out? You need a VPN to even get out.
Well, also they paid the troll factories in the past, and now they're moving where the troll factories work from. But we had troll factories in different parts of like Montenegro and others that were, they're just paying them to sit in offices and just make up shit because they don't have any vested interest in the topic. But I would say this: if I were a godlike figure, and that's a good thing not to have me be, Trust me, it would probably not be good. But I would tell Africans and others that get caught up in this. Russia uses state capture to control you. So as much as you bitch about colonialism, and I totally am on page with you on that, you have colonialism all over again. It just doesn't look like that. It's called state capture. They own your resources. You don't own your resources. If you're a real black liberationist like I am, and that's really what's missing with the Russian fueling of liberation movements. So they didn't really mean it. It's a disingenuous argument from the Russian side. They meant switch one slave collar for another slave collar, because you'll know that it's true the moment you yank those resources back. CAR, Sudan, every country that's been affected by these concessions under Wagner, they need to understand SVR runs Wagner now. SVR, I don't know if you caught that news this week.
No.
Research has shown that the majority of positions run under Wagner are completely retooled under the SVR. So they're now. There was already an alliance between the Russian MOD, a straight line between the Russian MOD straight into Wagner. But now it's Russian intelligence agencies running those, because they're not going to let go as a parasite level of the control of those resources in Africa. It's too big a deal for them. And the influence market of what's called Luc Michel, basically the big Russian influence market for African propaganda. Luc Michel is the guy who runs one of the big ones. They use this overdriven pro-Kremlin narrative that has nothing to do with covering African stories, has nothing to do with covering African issues at all. But if you throw out just enough money to pay some bills and put some food on the table, why not just push every day whatever is the message of the day from the Kremlin throughout Africa or South America or wherever else that they're going to push it? And we're going to be fighting that on not just X, but on Facebook. We don't see it here. There are some pro-Russian accounts on this platform, but mostly on those, it's unchecked and off and unhinged, no less.
Oh, it is. It is. I mean, look, in June last year, I went to go and see the prisoners, the Russian prisoners. And most of those who, I saw were coming from Africa and South America and some of the poorest places on earth. And they were talking about an even bigger criminal underworld that Russia was using to drag those guys from places like Mogadishu into countries in Africa that have a Russian consulate or an embassy, so they can get their, speedy visas into Russia and be inside Russia within 2 weeks. When I spoke to one of them, and just sort of said, didn't you think it was odd that you could get it so quick and then into Russia within 2 or 3 weeks? He was like, "I'm from Mogadishu, dude. What would you have done?" And I was like, "Probably." I tried to apply for the British and the Americans. They wouldn't have me. Russia's the only one that had me. I was like, "Didn't you ask her? Did you think about to answer any questions?" These guys don't know what's going on in world geopolitics and shit like that. They've heard of stuff like that. They don't think they're going to go. And generally, money wasn't their number one motivator. It was to get out of the place they were living in was their number one motivator. The money came along secondary. So, I learned a great deal from that. But yeah, going by what you said, this is much bigger. This is like Wagner. This is like criminal underworld that Russia's working with to get these people. Even Kenya this week said they've got 1,000 soldiers fighting for Russia.
That's right.
Actively blamed Russia for recruiting from Kenya, which then Russia denied. Of course, Russia denies everything. It's not going to invade Ukraine. Oh, there we go. We've just invaded Ukraine. Now, it's denied everything Russia does. So,
and some of these countries have actually passed, like Nepal. When I saw those same prisoners, maybe not name for name, same prisoners, but I saw the Nepalese, Sierra Leone guy, Richard, and Cuban guy, etc., that were all available for us as journalists to ask them questions. And their stories matched mostly. I went to find some work in Moscow, and then I was on a truck and a train to the front. Next thing I know, I was in Rostov. Next thing I know, I'm at the front. And I basically ran to the Ukrainian position and said, "Hey, man, I don't want to be part of this shit." But Nepal raised an issue pretty forcefully to Moscow, saying, "Hey, we have fucking rules against this. Stop doing that. And return the dead bodies of the Nepalese that have been fighting over there." Because they had people back home saying, "Hey, where's my son? Where's my husband?" My husband went for work in Moscow and hasn't returned. And they've passed laws to prevent them. And there's several countries that have created, I think you ran into this in some of your interviews, I hope, where they're stateless now because wherever they come from doesn't work.
Yeah. It's really tragic, really, because one is that I'm one of the last people that fought for Ukraine that wasn't born in Ukraine. Generally, Russians the same. So they're not exchanging anybody that, they're exchanging people that are born in Russia and ethnic Russians. White, to be honest.
Right.
White ethnic Russians is what they're taking back. They're leaving all the people they've brought in to fight for the Russian army. Just I'm careful what I say because I don't like using the word foreign fighter because under the Geneva Conventions, it doesn't matter where you're from if you're fighting for a state army, and you're fighting under the flag of Russia. It doesn't matter if you're coming from Sierra Leone. It has no bearing. You should be treated as a POW. The problem comes is if you're Wagner, a private military contractor that's stateless, essentially stateless, because you're not part of the government. So you're a private military contractor who's fighting for money. You are then deemed a mercenary. And paramilitary groups like Nazi Russian, which, invaded Ukraine, which is a Nazi right-wing paramilitary group. So because you're not a part of a state army, you then could be deemed a mercenary and not entitled to any rights under as a POW. So these guys I met were officially Russian soldiers, just not born in Russia. They were brought in for the war. And those guys are not being exchanged. They haven't been. They're going to be here to the very end because Putin doesn't want them back. This is conveyor belt. If he has them go home and tell them what it's really like, the prisons that they're in now, I'm not saying up until the point where I saw them, I can't vouch for, but the prison I saw them in now is like the Ritz-Carlton of prisons. It's got, you can go and work. You will live in freedom. They get to use knives lying around. They don't, there's tools for them. They can use.
They get a chance to go outside and stretch their bones. And
they play football pitch. I never even got, they got visits from Red Cross for humanitarian aid. And people don't realize this. And, I never saw a Red Cross or humanitarian aid the whole time I was in captivity. I was given a death penalty. Yet I was a soldier, a Marine of the government. I'd never left the country. I had legal status. So when I go back and see these guys, when I see them whinging, I'm like, oh. And the reason I got on with them and did some interviews with them, because they were engaged in me, because they wanted to know what I'd experienced and that I was a prisoner, So those guys are either probably going to stay until the end of the war, which is debatable whether that's, that there's going to be peace within the next couple of years, or I certainly don't think there's going to be peace in 6 months. So under the Geneva Conventions, if they're still here and there's still and Russia doesn't exchange them, they've got the rights to stay in Ukraine, which a lot of them will. Most of them wanted their money that they were promised, their yellow brick road, their golden moment, which is that money's probably gone already. So they want to go back to Russia because that's what they came for, the money. They're not going to get that. So most of them were concerned. And when I told them that I'd actually been sent to Saudi Arabia because I wasn't allowed to go back to Ukraine, despite having a residency, married to Ukrainian, and where they caught me was Ukraine, I had to go back to Britain first. When I told them the chances are you're probably going to go to a mediator country and then go back to your country of origin, most of those are looking at prison sentences now. So when they go back, they're scared shitless. So they're in a prison. I didn't want to make them even more miserable, or panic, because I know what it's like. So I was sort of saying to them, look, you've got to accept the fact that Russia doesn't want you. And they were just heartbroken because they were just like, but I'm Russian, I've got a passport. Yeah, but you're not really Russian. They don't look at it like that, and I have to sort of say, they're not really, without sort of saying they're not really interested in you because you're black. I can't say that. I can't actually say, because I don't want to make them miserable. But generally, they're not exchanging it because they don't want it back. They don't want to stop the conveyor belt of Africans coming in because those guys are going to go, don't do that, and that word get round super quick. So he doesn't want to exchange him. Plus, they don't want it back anyway. They don't want the guys coming back to when their commanders or their money is going to be taken by a senior body. One of the parents we spoke to of the prisoners didn't even know her son was, she was from Egypt, didn't even know her son was in captivity, thought he was dead. We rang her just as a sort of, he said, could you speak to my mum? And I spoke to the guard there and said, can I just ring his mum and let her know she was there? Just so happens that Brahim, who's on death row with me, speaks Arabic. So I got him in Morocco to ring this lad up, this mum's lad up, this lad's mum in Egypt, and he spoke to her and said, your son, we just met your son in prison. He's safe and alive. And she just went, oh, thanks for telling me. And we said, did the Russians tell you? She said, no, they don't know where he is. So I was like,
real quick, because it matters to me a lot, I'll cut through and say, how's Brahim and what's the situation there?
He's doing all right. We've started a campaign last year to get him some legal aid to try and get a passport, because Russia's tentacles are working there. He can't get a passport to leave the country, so we're trying to push for him to get a passport. 3 years on, he's still in. I wouldn't say he's in trouble. He's in open arrest sort of scenario. Sure. Really. He's living in Morocco. He's got to be a bit careful, but he's doing okay. Hopefully, we'll have some good news on that soon, because he wants to come back to Ukraine and testify like the rest of us for the treatment he received while he was in captivity. So he's been unable to do that. So we raised about $7,000 for him last year, which we've given him some to stop the legal fees. And then the rest of it is to, when he comes over, to give him some resettlement once he can get out of Morocco, which hopefully we'll have some good news soon about that. Hopefully we'll start a new legal campaign, and just to try. It's in the constitution, Morocco's constitution, that every Moroccan should have a passport, except for Brahim. They just keep it. It's Russian tentacles. It's money being paid. It's literally. He's got to be exceptionally careful, but they won't give him a passport. They blame poor paperwork in court paperwork. He's been to court twice for it, and they said, no, it's badly. We need to submit the paperwork again. So he's like, this is top lawyer that he's got doing it. He's being told you need to submit the paperwork again. He's got little clicks on his phone, people tailing him in where he lives. So, he's got to be exceptionally careful. But yeah, he's still 3 years, 4 years on under open arrest. He never left the Russian prison. And he was a really intelligent. He's a rocket scientist. Like, he did electrical engineering at Kyiv University. Everyone in Kyiv seems to know him. He was a very popular lad, and he spoke like 4 languages that he learned online. He spoke Arabic, French, English, and by the end of it, he was speaking Ukrainian. He speaks fluent Russian, and he speaks with an American accent. He's never been to America. He's a friggin' intelligent lad, and I don't want to see him waste his life in, stuck, because he felt that he wanted to defend Ukraine, and there isn't much Ukraine can really do for him in Morocco. There's not much they can essentially do.
What else is on the list before we go? Because, by the way, everyone, thank you for being here. Here every
got a good
Friday.
turnout.
We just happen to do a Sunday, and I'm not done yet. I want everyone at the top of the hour. We're going to reboot all of this over again, and I'm bringing on my good friend Liberal Trucker, who's one of my favorite people to watch. And I know you don't want to miss it, so don't go anywhere. We're just going to recycle so that the algorithm does its thing and gives Shaun good videos and gives me good videos to share with you later. But let's talk about that for a minute. That I love doing this platform with you. I love that essentially once we're done, these little segments of the discussions are available for us to share later. What are your final thoughts for our friends?
Oh, I wish I had a bit of time to prepare for that, really. Watch the news.
You got plenty of time, man. We got.
You'll see the propaganda. You'll see the propaganda's changed. It's now fighting fires. The swagger's gone in the propaganda. Keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on now. What you're seeing is more overt. Steve Witkoff and the Trump administration trying to whitewash atrocities by trying to say that it's the poor Russians who are struggling as well. And Russians are losing their lives, and this is just totally whitewashing the destruction that Russia's caused, the lives they've caused, the millions of lives they've destroyed. So we got to keep pushing on that. Yeah, and the propaganda is the one to watch at the moment and fight back on, because it's you'll see.
Let's do that. Let's do that Friday. I will build a package between now and then of the propaganda we've seen and we expect, because
because the elections are coming up.
Study this shit. I study this shit, and I study the Russian model of propaganda and how they do this. That's accidentally why I know some things about what happens with Russia. Is that when I was younger, I was fascinated by war art that said outlandish shit and why it was, so influential. But I really didn't get it till after the Bush administration era, when I would pick apart, basically PSYOP, and understood that a president or a general has an objective that's pumped down to a team that goes out and says, okay, well, we need this village to do that, and we need that village to do that. And once I put it all back together, I went, oh, propaganda. It's a product, of an objective. So it helped me really reverse engineer that. And we can actually, pull this apart quite a bit and be prepared to do so.
And we'll talk about on Friday how that they used it on me, because that's quite that will piece together what we're talking about, and it will show you what they did to me on. I may get some snippets, see if we can work some snippets into. Got some great video footage of me being interviewed by the Russians, so you can really see it working firsthand. Let's work out, see if we can do that.
Right. I see, of our friends who are in the space, if you see right now, my friend Liberal Trucker is already in this chat space. Follow his account now, because he's got a good footing over on the other platform, Instagram especially. But here, I think this is a great place for you guys to build up real time right now, and he'll come back here with us in about 30 minutes or so. Shaun, I want to say that I think that if there's one thing I've really enjoyed about the last few months is watching that you, and I don't want to say I enjoy you being stressed, but I get to talk to you and like, hey bro, I'm okay, and I gotta get you later. You're frantically putting together real quality information.
Have you seen this? Have you seen this shit that's come out? It's
right.
Yeah, I have seen it. Yeah, it's like unbelievable. Yeah,
it's fun.
I like a daily blog now on so what turned out to a daily column has now turned into sort of look back at it. It's like a daily blog of that's going. That's really picked up. I've only been on Substack a couple of months, and I've got 1,000 subscribers already. And, we're starting to really, it's dangerous when you start to reject, but you have to give people some sort of insight into where you think it's going. It's not a given, anything can happen. But generally over the last 4 years, I don't think I've been wrong on very much at all. So I want to be wrong if the truth be known. I want to be wrong and the war ends and Ukraine wins. And, it's like, but, it's a really, I think we're in the middle of it. I don't think there's a sight. I think we're for another couple of years. And I honestly believe that this, we're not going to get peace from this peace deal. And I'm not being pessimistic. Hopefully us talking just shows you that not negative. We want this to succeed, but just where the administration, the foundations of it are flawed to beyond belief. So, but it's a pleasure. Thanks for coming.
Well, and I want to say one more thing. Follow Shaun's account, and if you are following Shaun's account, and you probably are, you're smart people. Put that $5 paid subscription when you can, so that essentially that especially if it's spread out, $5 for everyone, it goes up, and eventually he is more into the content than, wait, do we have enough for the bills? No. Okay, hold on, I gotta go write more articles.
Yeah, pump out another show quick.
So, and I think that's invaluable. And I've been telling our friends, I learned this from when I was at Pacifica Radio. That was our station. We very rarely get to own our own station. The way the media is, it's over there and we pay into it, one-way trip. They don't have to fucking listen to us. They can ignore us and they can exploit us. CNN doesn't wake up in the morning and go, what do our viewers want? They don't give a fuck what you want. They're going to put all that shit up and you're going to just deal with it. If you don't believe me, ask why Scott Jennings is still on television. Same thing with MSNBC, Fox, And I don't deal with the other media markets because I don't get to lecture Canadians yet. Or Brits, you guys have a whole different way of doing things that, I'll leave to you guys to explain. But in America, you're a one-way commodity. You're who they're selling the appliances to and the services to only, and they basically don't give a shit. Here, take investment in this. Take a chance to realize that we do this based on your feedback. We do this based on what you raise. And when I go to the briefings here in Kyiv, most of the time, if you watch the live streams and ask yourself what was the question Chris asked today, it's what I hear you ask about. Whatever I read the comments or I listen to Twitter Spaces or different areas where I get some of the feedback of what people want to know about, like the status of the Yale Institute database on children or any of those things I know everyone's talking about. And we have some great friends here that do, like I see Mockers and others that, host spaces, and I kind of know what they talk about. And I ask those questions here in person in Kyiv, and they help me bridge the inside world of Ukraine that, as you know, is very insular in its own arguments about what's going on in the outside world and what is it that we can do to help. So for everyone here, you're part of this. This is your network. And we're organically building up. And I see there's 72 people here. I hope there's 72 people in that first 20, 30 minutes of the next space that I'm going to run here, or whatever you want to call this broadcast here on this platform, so we can talk to Liberal Trucker and Shaun, brother from the heart. Slava Ukraini, Heroim Slava.
Thank you, brother.
Thankful to you, man. We'll see you soon.
See you Friday, 9 o'clock next Friday.
Friday, same time, same place. Substack.
See you later.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Not the Brunich. So see you guys here. There's the link at the space to the live broadcast. It will go in about under 30 minutes. We're not done. And it's 10:30 my time. It'll be 11 when I get started. I'm just going to go walk around, stretch out the bones, listen to some incredibly insane, crazy music to keep the energy going. And we'll see you back here in just a bit. So you know how we do this. Slava Ukraini, Heroim Slava, I Pizdets, Rossiyskiy Federat.